Hello. Welcome to an adventure. I hope that you're having a good week so far. It's Wednesday here, in case you didn't know. I am Anthony Wright Day Hernandez, Community Collections Archivist here at Virginia Tech, and this is a once-a-week stream where we see what we can find in the archives. So, yeah. Hi. Let me see who's here. I see Matt M33. Hello. Hi, Hannah. It's good to see you. Anybody else who's here who just hasn't participated in chat, welcome. There is no obligation. So I am happy to have everyone who joins or watches on the VOD or engages in whatever way. So, yeah. I love that it's giving me a reminder to turn on the captions, even though they are on. I don't know. So I did. Yeah, I don't know. Had a thought, it left. Hopefully audio and whatnot is working on both channels. This, in case you didn't know, streams both on twitch.tv/VTUL Studios, which is the University Libraries channel, as well as my own personal channel, twitch.tv/Rogan27. And since everything that we look at on this show is part of the Special Collections and University Archives here at Virginia Tech, we do like to just take a quick look at and recognize the history of the institution, since, you know, this is sort of history focused. Hi, Fludan. Virginia Tech acknowledges that we live and work on the Tutelo and Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that the Morrill Land Grant Acts of 1862 enabled the Commonwealth of Virginia to finance and found Virginia Tech through the forced removal of Native nations from their lands in California and other areas in the West. Virginia Tech acknowledges that its Blacksburg campus sits partly on land that was previously the site of the Smithfield and Solitude plantations owned by members of the Preston family. Between the 1770s and the 1860s, the Prestons and other local white families that owned parcels of what became Virginia Tech also owned hundreds of enslaved people. Enslaved Black people generated resources that financed Virginia Tech's predecessor institution, the Preston and Olin Institute, and they also worked on the construction of its building. Yeah, and then there's one other university history thing to pay attention to today. I was not actually prepared to share a thing, but I can share a thing. Today is the 16th of April, and that is an important date in the history of Virginia Tech. We don't often look specifically at it on this stream because the stream is focused on more like the wonder and whimsy of history, but there are some not great things in history. And the shooting that happened here in 2007 on April 16th continues to be something that affected the higher education industry nationwide, as well as here at Virginia Tech. So if you're at all interested in any of the online remembrance stuff, that website will take you to it. Yeah. There is also a digital exhibit from special collections in university archives that our university archivists put together. If you wanted to see some of the things that are in the archives, we don't typically end up looking at them on this stream, like I said, just because it's kind of heavy content. So, but since today is actually the 16th, I thought it was worth just acknowledging it at the beginning. So today we are returning to Harper's magazine, Harper's Weekly to be specific, and we will be looking at issues from 1862, which I believe can be accessed on this site without a subscription. Nope. Okay, that's fine. There are issues here. Yikes. Thank you, ads. Actually, that was solicitations, not ads. But hang on one second. I will find a link for you. Possibly. I'm like, I know these are available free of charge on the interwebs. Yeah. I think this link would take you directly to the 1862 issues of Harper's Weekly on archive.org, which is the Internet Archive. Yeah, but so we'll be looking at these things today. Hi, Sterling. How are you? It's good to see you. I wish you were sitting next to me helping host. Let's see. Let's go here. We have Harper's Weekly. And we have the year 1862. And I don't necessarily know a ton of like specific dates we should pay attention to in 1862. Jules has put some bookmarks in. There is one thing that I mentioned the year 1862 at the start of every stream, and I thought, it might be interesting to look and see if there's anything there. What day did it pass? The Morrill Act of 1862, effective July 2nd, 1862. So I'm going to start by jumping us to July, I hope. Well, I got us to May pretty quickly. July, June 28th. Okay. Harper's Weekly Journal of Harper's Weekly, a Journal of Civilization. This is Saturday, July 5th, 1862. I have no idea whether there will even be a mention of it, but I figured we can't look at 1862 without looking to see if there's a mention of it. Since I mention the year literally every week. So illustrations that we have on the front cover of this issue: the levee at Memphis, Tennessee, hauling sugar and cotton from their hiding places for shipment north. Sketched by Mr. Alex Simplot. And let's see this other sketch. Oh wow, this one's labeled with letters on the in the sketch. So let's see how well we can do at finding them. All right, we have letter A, which is Fort State Corner. This is a general view of Cumberland Gap, Tennessee, sketched by Dr. B. Howard. But okay, so Fort State Corner. Fort not named. Fort Colonel Churchill. The Gap. Fort Colonel Rains. All right, where's F? F is all the way over here. And that is Fort Colonel Mallory. G, Stockade and Rifle Pit. I. They don't have an H. They go to I, but honestly, I is difficult to see too. Because I can't tell where it is. Oh, and this is not C, this is G. C is actually here. That's Fort Colonel Churchill. I do not see letter I. Letter I is Lewis's Gap, but I'm uncertain where it is. The next one is L, which is Fort Colonel Hunter. And then we have M, which I think is here. And that is labeled Kentucky Road through Gap. O is Baptist Gap, but I don't see that either. I probably would end up needing a magnifying glass to see some of these. And then P is Earthworks recently constructed, which I don't see where the letter P is on here either. So it's a labeled sketch, but boy, you gotta have sharp eyes to be able to really see some of those labels, because I have no idea where they are. Anyway, that's not what we came to the state looking for. Okay. Harper's Weekly, before Richmond. Important political movement. Nope. Okay, but some of these are going to be interesting to, like, I don't know what they're going to say, but let's just find out. Why don't we? Congratulations, Madam 33. You've been randomly selected as a VIP for the stream. Enjoy your digital gemstone and the ability to award pun points. All right. Let's see. The Lounger. A look in the lull. Since the Battle of Fair Oaks, there has been a lull. It may be broken at any moment, and we may occupy Richmond, either by the evacuation of the enemy or by a bloody engagement. Yet one thing is now so clear that it should be included in every estimate of the future. It is that we are dealing not with an organized power or state or government, which, when it has lost its capital and is universally defeated, proposes terms of submission, but with a vast horde of banditti, uh, uh, Practically, they are that. They are some 200,000 men in arms. This is 1862. There are still, what, like 3 more years of this war to go? um, if they are driven from one point, as at Corinth, they reappear, either together or separately, elsewhere. At this very moment, it would not be surprising to hear that a large force threatens New Orleans, or has reinforced Charleston or Richmond or Jackson in the Shenandoah Valley. If they retire from Richmond, they may secretly and rapidly withdraw to the valley and drive Fremont before them as Jackson drove Banks. How do we know that 50,000 men have not been sent to Jackson, while the remainder hold the attention of McClellan? At any moment, we should not be surprised at a rebel foray, or an attempted foray, at any point of our lines. We are engaged with a foe to whom everything is fair. He frankly preaches assassination, and it will not be forgotten that it was proposed to assassinate President Lincoln as the opening movement of the insurrection. If it is said that this infamy cannot be charged upon the leaders, the simple reply is that the question whether Marshal Kane of Baltimore was not probably a confidant of the leaders, and whether he did not know perfectly well that there was to be a riot in Baltimore upon occasion of the president's passage. And there could be but one intention in such a riot. Wow. But some of this sounds very rhetorically similar to recent years. It will not be in the least surprising to hear that attempts have been made to murder Governor Johnson or General Butler, because, however absurdly causeless the revolt of the rebels may be, they are doubtless quite as desperate in their hatred of the United States government as any people ever were in hating actual oppressors. If it comforts any tender soul to call them misguided brothers, by all means let him call them so. But by no means let him forget that these misguided brothers hate us with deadly hate, and are trying to kill us with poison and powder, and every infernal device, and that they will try to do so until they are taught by fear that it is not safe for them to try it longer. Interesting. I think these are editorials, because they don't have a byline. So I think they're just written by the editors of the paper. See, there's a section here titled Mexico, which I'm curious. I'm gonna zoom in further. And of course, if anybody does know of a specific date in 1862 that you would like me to try and take a look at, just drop it into chat and I'm happy to look at those dates. Mexico. The Mexican question may easily lead to a very serious complication. I'm wondering what the Mexican question was in 1862. Louis Napoleon has interfered for the aristocratic church party in Mexico with the evident intention of destroying the present liberal Juarez government and of necessarily remaining protector of what government may follow. Should he succeed in establishing himself there, what will inevitably be his first wish? Clearly, that his precarious colony should have no large and powerful neighbor, and especially not that powerful neighbor whose policy has always been to forbid Europe to put foot upon the continent. What will be the obvious method to avoid such a neighbor? Clearly, to secure its division. When Louis Napoleon is established in Mexico, he will have a vital interest in the success of the insurrection in this country. There is another view. Suppose him successful in Mexico, and that our rebellion is suppressed before he can have had a fair chance to intervene. Then our revolted section will be silent and sullen. It will be held by military power, conquered, not converted. Quite possibly, Matt. Do you know the dates? Because I could look them up. I don't know them off the top of my head, but if you have the dates, you can drop them in chat, and then I can use those as a reference. Suppose him successful in Mexico, and that our rebellion is supposed before he can have had a fair chance to intervene. Then our revolted section will be silent and sullen. It will be held by military power, conquered, not converted. Louis Napoleon will not fail to see that our policy toward him must necessarily be modified by that condition of affairs. The moment we strike at him, he unites with the waiting rebels, and we have the rebellion revived, plus the French alliance. That Louis Napoleon has political designs upon this continent is unquestionable. Their execution must depend greatly upon the position of the United States. They would never have been entertained but for our Civil War. They may be so directed as to prolong and perplex that war and imperil the government. Last September, Mr. Adams wrote to Mr. Seward that Lord Russell sorry, I was just like, name. Mr. Adams wrote to Mr. Seward that Lord Russell told him. Okay, so that's what, like, at this point, third-hand information? Fourth-hand? I don't know. That the proposition to open the Mexican matter to the United States to see if some settlement could not be made was accepted by Spain as an alternative for a short time, and that France concurred, though not without hesitation. In January of this year, he writes that the French military occupation will go on and will not stop with the limits first assigned. It is not difficult, says Mr. Adams, to understand the nature of the fulcrum thus obtained for operations in a new and different quarter should the occasion be made to use it. The expedition to the City of Mexico may not stop until it shows itself in the heart of the Louisiana Purchase. Yeah, okay, I'm done with that one for now, unless you want me to keep going. But it is significantly longer, and I was really hoping that I might find something about the Land Grant Act, but I haven't found anything yet. Okay, this could be dangerous, but I'm gonna try. But it could. We might need some historical terms, notes, quite possibly. because we all know that humor doesn't necessarily stand the test of time. But humors of the day. Pitt's proposal. Pitt is a fast man, a sharp man, and a man of business tact. When Pitts goes to make a purchase, he always gets the lowest cash price and then says, well, I'll look about, and if I don't find anything that suits me better, I'll call and take this. Pitts, like all fast men, is partial to the ladies, young ones in particular. Now lately, Pitts says to himself, I am getting rather long in years, and so I'll marry. His business qualities wouldn't let him wait. So off he travels, calls upon a lady friend, and opens conversation by remarking that he would like to know what she thought about his getting married. Oh, Mr. Pitts, that is an affair in which I am not very greatly interested, and I prefer to leave it with yourself. But, says Pitts, you are interested. And my dear girl, will you marry me? The young lady blushed very red and hesitated. Finally, as Pitts was very well to do in the world and of good standing in society, she accepted him. Whereupon the matter-of-fact Pitts responded, well, I'll look about, and if I don't find anybody that suits me better, I'll come back. That one had a very long setup. Oh, hello, Winsies! Hello, 16-bit Eric. Welcome in, Raiders. I hope that the land of Hyrule treated you well for the remainder of your stream. How is everybody? Welcome to Archival Adventures. I am Rogan27, and I am the Community Collections Archivist at Virginia Tech. This is my Wednesday show where we look at things from archives and special collections at Virginia Tech. So welcome. It's good to see you all. Pretty Witchery, you should get some sleep. Thank you for popping in on the raid, but yes, go to bed. You are on the other side of the world. Hi, Castaboras, Shadows of Life, Blue Rooster. It's good to see all of you. Today we are looking at Harper's Weekly for the year 1862. I started by it's 5:38 a.m. and you haven't gone to bed yet? Yikes. I'm not judging, I'm just knowing how tired I would be. So we started I jumped to early July of 1862 to see if there was any mention of the Morrill Land Grant Act of 1862. So far, there has not been. The next destination that we'll be going to is early April of 1862 to look for coverage of the battle at Shiloh. 1862. Sterling. It is 1862. The Virginia Tech is a land grant institution, but Virginia Tech was not founded in 1862 because Virginia Tech, like the land grant university in Virginia, couldn't take advantage of the Land Grant Act until Virginia had accepted the terms of surrender from the American Civil War and rejoined the Union. So, like, that's yeah. Because Virginia Tech on... Yeah. Tech was founded in 1872, 10 years after the act was passed. But when the act was passed, Virginia was a member of the Confederacy, therefore didn't have access to laws passed by the Union. So, yeah. We were just glancing at this column, Humors of the Day, and just trying to see if there's any actual humor in the humor of the day. Dandies and nanny goats never fail to pride themselves upon their kids. Okay. My wife tells the truth 3 times a day, remarked a jocose old fellow, at the same time casting a very mischievous glance at her. Before rising in the morning, she says, "Oh dear, I must get up, but I don't want to." After breakfast, she adds, "Well, I suppose I must go to work, but I don't want to." And she goes to bed saying, "There, I have been passing all day and haven't done anything." I see why they found that humorous, but honestly, it's not that funny. Pat's mode of avoiding the society of mosquitoes. He hangs a lace net entirely over his bed, gets inside of it himself, cuts a little hole in it just big enough to admit one varmint at a time, makes believe to be asleep, and when the whole troop, pioneers and all, get through, Pat stops up the hole with a piece of putty, creeps carefully out under the bar, and sleeps undisturbed for the remainder of the night upon the floor. Okay. La, da, 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 da. But why? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so far, I mean, it might be covered, but it's definitely not a big story. Okay, let's go back to April and see about the Battle of Shiloh. That's April 19th. 12. Maybe you had to have been there. Quite possibly. I just saw something that we'll definitely want to be looking at. Since we've been reading a journal from a naval ship, we're definitely going to want to look at some naval ship stuff at some point here. April 6th, you say? Yeah, April 6th and 7th was Shiloh. Where is Shiloh? This I do not actually know off the top of my head. Because it's definitely further, also known as the Battle of Pittsburg Landing. Yeah, further south than where I typically ended up looking. So it's in Tennessee. So that's North Carolina, but they're looking at it. We're not to the date of it yet. We're still looking at the 5th. So it would be the earliest it could show up is this April 12th issue. And their front page is the Battle of New Bern in North Carolina. But, let's see. Kentucky. Politics in the dark. Poor Delaware. Humor, domestic intelligence. On Tuesday, May 25th in the Senate, a bill in relation to administering the oath of allegiance. No. General Sumner's advance. Warrenton Junction. Newport News. Corinth. Campaign in Arkansas. Beaufort in our hands. Island number 10. Which is... I'm sorry. This is the second mention of it, and so now I'm curious. The fight at Island number 10. The firing at Island number 10 was continued on 28th with great spirit by the rebels. It was evident that the guns were of very heavy caliber. They were observed to be cutting away the trees and mounting fresh guns, showing every indication of a protracted defense. Several rebel gunboats, partially clad with railroad iron, were reported to be advancing down the river, but there was no expectation that they could pass the powerful batteries of General Pope. Where is Island number 10? If I were born to be a river, if a river is all I'd be, I'd tell the giver of all the rivers to make me the Tennessee. Oh, Boston Cider. I don't know that song, but it has a really good meter to it. Island number 10. The Battle of Island number 10. Oh, was an engagement at the New Madrid or Kentucky Bend on the Mississippi River, forming the border between Missouri and Tennessee. It lasted from February 28th until April 8th. Island number 10, a small island at the Tennessee base of a tight double turn in the river, was held by the Confederates from the early days of the war. It was an excellent site to impede Union efforts. Okay, but does it not have any other name? I love that it also says Island number 10 was an island in the Mississippi River. That sort of implies that it is no longer there. Oh, I'm finding some interesting history, so I'm going to switch us to the screen share because this is a very interesting primer. Of course, this is Wikipedia. Island number 10 was an island in the Mississippi River near Tiptonville, Tennessee, and a site of a major eponymous battle in the American Civil War. In the mid-19th century, so 1850s-ish, the United States government began to adopt a uniform numbering plan for islands in the lower Mississippi River, that part of the river below its confluence with the Ohio River near Cairo, Illinois. This system assigned each major island a number, which increased in the downstream direction. The purpose of this system was to create a level of certainty in documents describing islands in the river as to exactly which island was meant. To a large extent, however, the system had an unintended and at times almost reverse effect. The numbering system was based on the premise that the islands were relatively permanent, static features, when in fact the opposite is true. Due to erosion and accretion, the islands in the lower Mississippi are in a constant state of flux, ever growing, shrinking, and at times disappearing entirely, particularly after major floods. Today, the land described in the mid-19th century as Island Number 10, as is the case with many of the islands of the lower Mississippi, no longer really exists. Some of what constituted it is now part of the floodplain near New Madrid, Missouri, as the river's channel changed. The bulk of it has simply been eroded away. For this reason, the Battle of Island Number 10 monument, which references this fact, is located on State Route 22, approximately 3 miles north of Tiptonville. The cemetery where some of the combatants were interred is across the river in Missouri. So, yes, the Battle of Island Number 10 happening here at Island Number 10 took place at an island that wasn't very permanent. This is a very interesting part of the country. If you're unfamiliar with the New Madrid area, there is a major fault line there. And the last time that the New Madrid fault went off, the Mississippi River flowed backwards. And it's quote unquote overdue to have another major earthquake. Fault lines are never really actually overdue. It's just that based on the history of that fault, it has historically erupted on average more frequently than the time between the last erupted. It has, the fault has slipped historically, on average, more frequently than the time between the last time the fault slipped in the, I think it was the early 1800s, and now. Meaning, basically, any time it could go, but that's true all the time. It's just that every year it becomes more likely. And the last time that that fault had a major earthquake, it rang church bells in Toronto. It's little bit of like trivia that I find the New Madrid fault very interesting. So I know more about it than I probably should, but that's okay. Nope. Well, okay. That works for one page. I know there's a way to flip things. I'm gonna try new things with this camera today. All right. This is the Burnside expedition. Troops landing below the rebel ports near New Bern, North Carolina. They're still covering New Bern. And then the lower sketch there is the Burnside expedition bombardment of New Bern, North Carolina. Okay, let's see. That didn't quite do what I was hoping. Ah, there we go. We had a big old earthquake in Southern California on Monday. Briefly reminded us all of our mortality. Oh dear. I didn't hear about the earthquake in California. This is basically what they had to cover the war, rather than because photography existed, but it was really slow. These sketches, so much faster. So this is what they had. Views at New Madrid and Point Pleasant. Point Pleasant, Federal Battery, Fort Jeff Thompson, or lower fort. Woods where our batteries were located. I don't actually see any woods, but that's what it's labeled. Rebel breastworks made of sacks filled with shelled corn. I guess that's these little, you can barely see them. I could zoom in. There. These would be the breastworks. Basically just walls of sacks filled with shelled corn. Quarters of Captain Mower, 1st U.S. Infantry. Rebel tents left standing. Houses burnt by the rebels. Okay. Teramoto. Still haven't found Shiloh. They're still really on the Battle of New Bern. Oh. I was like, it's upside down now. Oh. Well, this isn't the Battle of New Bern. This is the Battle of Winchester. Decisive charge upon the rebels at the stone wall. I'm assuming Winchester, Virginia? I don't know. I'm sure there are other Winchesters. I default to thinking of Virginia because I used to live in Winchester. First Battle of Winchester, May 25th, 1862. We're in April. April 12th, to be precise. So if the First Battle of Winchester took place in May, what battle is depicted here? I'm very confused. I am so curious now. Okay, let's look at the... Like, I'm so curious. The First Battle of Winchester was in May. This sketch of the Battle of Winchester is in the April 12th issue. So did the sketch artist travel back in time? This is from the Encyclopedia of Virginia, the Encyclopedia of Virginia online. Okay, the Shenandoah Valley Campaign, conducted from February to June 1862, catapulted Confederate General Stonewall Jackson from relative obscurity. Yeah. 6 small engagements at Kernstown, McDowell, Front Royal, Winchester, Cross Keys, and Port Republic. So would this then be the small engagement? What, in Winchester? Okay, so his headquarters was in Winchester in January. We're in April. I want to know about April, please. it's weird for me seeing this map because like I literally used to live in Winchester, and so I'm like, oh, Strasburg, and yeah, I'm like, I know all these places. Harrisonburg, I know, like, I know all of those places. Um, March, April 3rd. There's no mention of a battle at Winchester, but like, I am so curious. Okay. Battle of Winchester, 1862. Charge upon the stone wall. Or charge, yeah. Charge upon the rebels at the stone wall. Okay, so here we've got the Library of Congress with the fully flattened out image. So this is just the same image, but I don't want I wish it would have let me do full screen. Probably still can. I just have to mess with this real quick. Yeah. Show full screen windows. Nope. It doesn't want to let me. Okay. That's okay, but anyway. So this is it's the same image. So let me look at the metadata here. Battle of Winchester, the title, Battle of Winchester, Decisive Charge Upon the Rebels at the Stone Wall by Alfred R. Woad. Created March 15th, 1862. Kernstown, First Battle of Winchester. They have it tagged as. Okay, so it's apparently in Civil War research, it is referred to as the First Battle of Kernstown. And Kernstown is just south of Winchester. So this isn't the First Battle of Winchester, which didn't take place until May, because this was the First Battle of Kernstown. Okay. Well, we cleared up that they didn't have the they didn't name the wrong place. It's just that over the years, Kernstown and Winchester have become considered separate battlefields. And so they are now numbered separately because they both had multiple battles, apparently. I still haven't seen anything about Shiloh. We will find it, though. Ooh. There's, of course, a column about what we were just looking at, so I might read that. But also... Picture! I really do like the sketches. Exact picture of the rebel steamer Virginia Merrimack, drawn at the office of the drawn by an officer of the Roanoke. We've talked multiple times about the Merrimack, the CSS Virginia. All right, so the first Battle of Kernstown, the Battle of Winchester. On Saturday afternoon, March 15th, at about 2:15, our advanced pickets on the Strasburg Road discovered the rebel cavalry under the madcap Ashby, about half a mile beyond them, reconnoitering the woods on both sides of the turnpike, and steadily advancing. Our pickets consisted of a few men of the 14th Indiana Infantry at that point, and they fell back half a mile to the hamlet of Kernstown, 4 miles from Winchester. The rebels, observing our pickets fall back, were confirmed in the belief that our forces here did not exceed 5,000 men. They then gave chase. Coming up with our men, Ashby cried at the top of his voice, "There they are, boys! Now give them hell!" Steadily did the troopers advance as our men wheeled to aim and fire. That fire sent many of them reeling from their saddles, and threw the rest into such confusion that before they could again be rallied for a charge, our gallant little band of infantry was beyond the reach of their power, without having lost a man, killed, or wounded. Meanwhile, skirmishing progressed on other points along our advance line, and our pickets were everywhere rallying on our reserves. General Shields, hearing of the advance of the rebel cavalry, supposed it to be a maneuver of Ashby alone for the purpose of watching our movements. As they were approaching so boldly and so closely, however, he ordered 4 advanced companies of infantry engaged in protecting the supply train to rally to the support of the more advanced pickets and try to hold the rebels in check till he could move down the division. Oops. I wasn't trying to go to the Be Right Back screen. It would have been appropriate since an ad break was running, but Army at New Madrid. Oh. We have read about this in our series with the USS Dakota Engineers Journal. This illustration here is the battle between the Monitor and the Merrimack in Hampton Roads, March 9th, 1862. And the fact that this is appearing in the April 12th issue tells me that we need to look about a month out to find the issue that will have stuff about Shiloh. But now I have a guesstimate of how long to jump forward to look for Shiloh. So, oh, there it is. Oh, honestly, really, really fast turnaround on this one. Because this is the April 26th issue. And the cover illustration is Major General Halleck in the field, April 1862. They really are very good woodcuts. Like, the woodcut printing of these sketches is done extraordinarily well. Domestic intelligence. For an account of the Battle of Pittsburg Landing, Shiloh, and the advance upon Yorktown, see page 262. Oh, but we have illustrations first. I want to start with this one. All right. I was trying to flatten it out and pause the image for you all so that I could then move it and actually read it. There. Big Bethel and its fortifications occupied by our troops, April 1862. Sketched by an officer of the topographical engineers. It includes Yorktown, camp of the Union troops, baggage train of Union Army on road to Yorktown, Big Bethel, which is the building, embankments for infantry, battery for 4 guns, battery for 2 guns, battery for 2 guns, battery for 2 guns, burned farms, and road to Hampton, 11 miles. That is an enormous perspective. It's a huge area of land in that sketch. And look at this one. Ha. The first day's firing at Yorktown, April 1862. Sketched by an officer of the topographical engineers. I kind of wish that I had known these pictures existed when we were reading the journal. It really is. Like, this would have been a great image to, like, have alongside when we were reading about that bombardment. I just wasn't really aware. Ooh. Yeah, they're really good. I don't know how they just, they're just hey, let's see. Longitudinal section of the Naugatuck. The Stevens Iron Steam Gunboat Naugatuck. Now at Fortress Monroe. We definitely read about its arrival there. advance upon Yorktown, the victory at Island number 10. But what I was asked to find, which I have now located, is coverage of Shiloh. Here referred to as the Battle of Pittsburg Landing. So I think let's see what they say. We published on pages 264 and 265 a large illustration of the Battle of Pittsburg Landing, Tennessee, fought on 6th and 7th between the Union Army under Generals Grant and Buell, and the rebels under Beauregard and Sidney Johnston. The point selected by our artist for illustration represents the final charge of our army under General Grant at 3 p.m. on the 7th. The Cincinnati Times gives the following account of the battle. Our forces were stationed in the form of a semicircle, the right resting on a point north of Crump's Landing, our center being in front of the main road to Corinth, and our left extending to the river in the direction of Hamburg, 4 miles north of Pittsburg Landing. At 2 o'clock in the morning of the 6th, 400 men of General Prentice's division were attacked by the enemy half a mile in advance of our lines. Our men fell back on the 25th Missouri, swiftly pursued by the enemy. The advance of the rebels reached Colonel Peabody's brigade just as the long roll was sounded and the men were falling into line. Resistance was but short, and they retreated under a galling fire until they reached the lines of the 2nd Division. I'm going to find the illustration and put it on screen. Because I can do that now. Because I have the technology. I can't flatten it out completely because of the way it's bound, but you can observe the picture of the Battle of Pittsburg Landing, final and victorious surge of the Union troops under Major General Grant, while I read to you the coverage of the battle. Or continue reading, at least. Oh dear. When it was on screen, it was bigger. At 6 o'clock, the attack had become general along our whole front. The enemy in large numbers drove in the pickets of General Sherman's division and fell on the 48th, 50th, and 72nd Ohio regiments. Those troops were never before in action, and being so unexpectedly attacked, made as able a resistance as possible, but were, in common with the forces of General Prentice, forced to seek support of the troops immediately in their rear. At 1 o'clock, the entire line on both sides was fully engaged. The roar of cannon and musketry was without intermission from the main center to a point extending halfway down the left wing. The rebels made a desperate charge on the 14th Ohio Battery, which, not being sufficiently supported by infantry, fell into their hands. Another severe fight occurred for possession of the 5th Ohio Battery, and 3 of its guns were taken by the enemy. By 11 o'clock, a number of commanders of regiments had fallen, and in some cases not a single field officer remained, yet the fighting continued with an earnestness which showed that the contest on both sides was for death or victory. Foot by foot, the ground was contested, and finding it impossible to drive back our center, the enemy slackened their fire and made vigorous efforts on our left wing, endeavoring to outflank and driving it to the riverbank. The wing was under General Hurlburt and was composed of the 14th, 32nd, 44th and 57th Indiana, 8th, 18th, and 21st Illinois. The 14th Indiana Regiment was not there. It is serving under General Shields in Virginia. Hi, Conciliants! Thank you for the 48-month free subscription. This is, the illustration is the Battle of Shiloh, referred to at the time as the Battle of Pittsburg Landing. And I'm reading the article that accompanies the picture. Fronting its line, however, was the 14th, 57th, and 77th Ohio, and 5th Ohio Cavalry and General Sherman's division. For nearly 2 hours, a sheet of fire blazed from both columns. The rebels fighting with a vigor that was not only equaled by the that was only equaled by those contending with them. While the contest raged, the hottest the gunboat Tyler passed up the river to a point opposite the enemy and poured in broadsides from her immense guns, greatly aiding in forcing the enemy back. Up to 3 o'clock, the battle raged with a fury that defies description. The rebels had found every attempt to break our lines unavailing. They had striven to drive in our main column, and finding that impossible, had turned all their strength upon our left. Foiled in that quarter, they now made another attempt at our center and made every effort to rout our forces before the reinforcements which had been sent for should come up. At 5 o'clock, there was a short cessation in the fire of the enemy, their lines falling back for nearly half a mile when they suddenly wheeled and again threw their entire forces upon our left wing, determined to make a final struggle in that quarter. But the gunboats Tyler and Lexington poured in their shot thick and fast with terrible effect. Meanwhile, General Wallace, who had taken a circuitous route from Crump's Landing, appeared suddenly on the enemy's right wing. In the face of this combination of circumstances, the rebels felt that their enterprise for the day was a failure, and as night was approaching, fell back until they reached an advantageous position somewhat in the rear, yet occupying the main road to Corinth. The gunboats continued to throw shell after them until out of range. After a wearied watching of several hours of intense anxiety, the advance regiments of General Buell appeared on the opposite bank of the river. The work of passing the river began. The 36th Indiana and 68th Ohio being the first to cross, followed by the main portions of Generals Nelson and Bruce's divisions. Cheer after cheer greeted their arrival, and they were immediately sent to the advance, where they rested on their arms for the night. All night long, steamers were engaged, ferrying General Buell's force across, and when daylight broke, it was evident the rebels, too, had been strongly reinforced. The battle on Monday was opened by the rebels at 7 o'clock from the Corinth Road, and in half an hour extended along the whole line. At 9 o'clock, the sound of artillery and musketry fully equaled that of the previous day. The enemy was met by our reinforcements and the still unwearied soldiers of the previous day with an energy they certainly could not have expected. It became evident they were avoiding the extreme of our left wing and endeavoring with perseverance and determination to find some weak point by which to turn our force. They left one point, but to return to it immediately, and then as suddenly would, by some masterly stroke of generalship, direct a most vigorous attack upon some division where they fancied they would not be expected. But the fire of our lines was as steady as clockwork, and it soon became evident that the enemy considered the task they had undertaken a hopeless one. Further reinforcements now began to arrive and took position on the right of the main center under General Wallace. Generals Grant, Buell, McClernand, Nelson, Sherman, and Crittenden were everywhere present, directing movements for a new stroke on the enemy. Suddenly, both wings of our army were turned upon the enemy with the intention of driving them into an extensive ravine. At the same time, a powerful battery, stationed in the open field, poured volley after volley of canister into the rebel ranks. At 11:30, the roar of the battle shook the earth. The Union guns were fired with all the energy that the prospect of the enemy's defeat inspired, while the rebels' fire was not so vigorous, and they evinced a desire to withdraw. They finally fell slowly back, keeping up a fire from their artillery and musketry along their whole column as they retreated. They went in excellent order, battling at every advantageous point, and delivering their fire with considerable effect. But from all the divisions of our lines, they were closely pursued, a galling fire being kept upon their rear. The enemy had now been driven beyond our former lines and were in full retreat for Corinth, pursued by our cavalry. The forces engaged on both sides in this day's battle are estimated at about 70,000 each, an entire force of 140,000 men. Another correspondent in the same paper thus mentions the final charge. Their fire was not so vigorous, is my new favorite euphemism. They were routed. Another correspondent in the same paper thus mentions the final charge. The enemy, after maintaining their ground till 3 p.m., gave way. The decisive blow was given by General Grant, who headed a charge of 6 regiments in person, precipitating his whole body on the the text is very small. Precipitating his whole body on the enemy's center with such desperate force that they broke and ran. Retreat at once became general. Within half an hour, the whole rebel army was falling back in dismay. Our rejoiced soldiers followed them, driving them through our camp in complete disorder. They were soon driven into a broken country where they would not form or fight. There was no relaxation in the pursuit. At the last accounts, the cavalry were 11 miles from the river, still following. The fugitives, exhausted, lay down and waited to be taken prisoners. Yep. Yeah. So that was at least their initial coverage of the Battle of Shiloh. I didn't mean to turn it upside down that time. This one still has a little bit of a fold in it, which makes turning the pages somewhat difficult because it's easy to catch it in the center and tear it. Oh, and here on May 3rd, 1862, we have another illustration related to the Battle of Pittsburg Landing, captioned, "The Heroes of the Battle of Pittsburg Landing." We have Sherman, Nelson, Prentice, Crittenden, Sweeney, Grant, Buell, Rousseau, McClernand, Wallace, and McCook. And it's pointing me to page 286. I was looking to see if those were related, but they're not. Okay, 276. This started out with, we have received several sketches of the Battle of Pittsburg Landing from our artist, Mr. H. Mosler, and 3 of them we reproduce on page 276. So let me jump back to there so that you all can see those. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit. Nope. And we'll let it focus, and I will pause it while I read. But you've got the Shiloh Meeting House in the upper left. So yes, it is big. It is a magazine, but it's on newsprint and would have been folded like a newspaper. So, but it technically is a magazine. So you've got the Shiloh Meeting House, Pittsburg Landing, and then General Boole's army crossing Duck River at Columbia, Tennessee to reinforce General Grant. Those are the 3 pictures on that page. So I'm gonna read the accompanying article. Ooh. This has got to be part of the inspiration for the Harpers in D&D. I have no idea, honestly. I mean, Harper's is still in operation today. The like company. Harper's Magazine. They are still publishing. And yeah, they've been around for a long time. So I have no idea if there's an association to, yeah. No, it's a interesting tangent. I don't know. Find the article. The Battle of Pittsburg Landing. Which I think it's funny that it's the Battle of Pittsburg Landing, which I had never heard of, because we just call it Shiloh. But back then, it was the Battle of Pittsburg Landing. We have received, several sketches. One represents the landing at Pittsburg, a scene, as Mr. Mosler says, of unmitigated mud. Up the steep banks of the bluff, here the troops of Boole's army toiled to join Grant, dragging their artillery with them. And down these bluffs, sad to state, the cowards in the raw regiments fled to seek shelter from shot and shell. Just the thought of someone going around observing all these battles and doing these beautiful illustrations and reporting to the public about them feels very Harper's to me. Oh, I'm happy to, Matt. It gives me something to look at instead of just hoping that we run across something. If I have a target, I feel like it's more interesting, but I also like to go in completely open and not sure what we'll run across. Another picture shows us Shiloh Meeting House, which was in front of General Sherman's division. The battle here raged with great fury, and at one time the wounded and dying of both armies sought refuge in the building. It is from this house that many propose to call the fight the Battle of Shiloh. A third... So that's it just strikes me as interesting. Like, apparently it was the Battle of Pittsburg Landing, but people were already calling a month later for it to be called the Battle of Shiloh. The third picture shows us General Buell's army crossing Duck River at Columbia, Tennessee, on their way to join General Grant. The infantry crossed over a pontoon bridge. The cavalry and artillery forded the river, while the baggage crossed the Great Bridge. Columbia is a pretty little village of 3,000 inhabitants. On page 273, we publish a group of portraits of the heroes of the Battle of Pittsburg Landing. The following sketches of the lives of the men will be read with interest. Major General Ulysses S. Grant. I'm going to read him. Why not? Unless you're bored out of your mind. Major General Ulysses S. Grant was born at Point Pleasant, Claremont County, Ohio, April 27, 1822, and entered West Point Military Academy from Ohio in 1839, where he graduated with honors in 1843 and was attached as Brevet Second Lieutenant to the 4th Infantry. He was promoted second lieutenant at Corpus Christi in September 1845 and served as such through Mexico under General Taylor at Palo Alto, Riasco de la Palma, and Monterrey, and under General Scott from Veracruz to the City of Mexico, and was twice promoted for his bravery. He was regimental quartermaster from April 1st, 1847, and when he resigned the service on the 31st of July, 1854, he was a full captain in the 4th Infantry of Regulars. After his resignation, he settled in St. Louis County, Missouri, and moved from there to Galena, Illinois in 1860. Upon the breaking out of the present war, he offered his services to Governor Yates and was appointed colonel of the 21st Regiment of Illinois Volunteers and served with his regiment until promoted a brigadier general with commission and rank from the 17th of May, 1861. He was engaged as colonel and acting brigadier general in several of the contests in southeastern Missouri, and his course as commander of the Southeast District of Missouri has been thoroughly scrutinized. And among his most praiseworthy acts was the occupation of Paducah and stoppage of communication and supplies to the rebels via the Tennessee and Cumberland rivers. The manner in which he conducted the Battle of Belmont is still fresh in our readers' minds. The rest of his course as commander there is too well known to be repeated here, and certain it is that his action in every instance has been applauded both by his superior officers and the people. After the capture of Fort Henry, a new district was created under the denomination of the District of West Tennessee, and General Grant was assigned by General Halleck to the command of it. He was in command of the Union forces at Fort Donelson, and his noted correspondence with General Buckner gained him a sobriquet of Unconditional Surrender Grant, answering to his initials of U.S. Grant. For the success of that action, he was created a major general, but being unavoidably absent from the field during the earlier portion of the fight, it was reported that he was temporarily deprived of his command until the matter could be investigated. After a few days, he was, however, again ordered into the field and took the command of our forces at Pittsburg Landing. From the accounts of correspondence, it does not seem that he showed much generalship, though his gallantry on the Monday undoubtedly contributed to the success of the day and will preserve his fame among the people. Apparently, he didn't show much gallantry. I should put their portraits up if I'm going to read this. I do think it's kind of interesting to see what they say, but I'm also distracting myself by finding other things that look interesting. As one does. I did not realize that U.S. Grant stood for unconditional surrender grant. Be right, UK! Apologies for interrupting archival excellence, but I wanted to flag the note Twitch sent me. I won't harp on about it, though. Thank you, Be Right UK, for the 52-month resubscription, and somebody throw some pun points at him, please. Major General D.C. Buell. Buell? I actually do not know how his name is said. It's spelled B-U-E-L-L. Bull? General Buell is a native of Ohio, in which state he was born about the year 1818. He graduated at the Military Academy at West Point in 1837 and served as second lieutenant in the 3rd Infantry. He obtained the rank of first lieutenant in June 1846 and accompanied his regiment to Mexico. In September of the same year, he was brevetted captain for gallant and meritorious conduct at Monterey. He accompanied General Scott's army and again distinguished himself at Cerro Gordo, Contreras, and Churubusco, was severely wounded at the latter fight and brevetted major for gallantry there. On his return home, he was appointed Assistant Adjutant General and served in that capacity in various parts of the country. On the outbreak of the war, Major Buell was active in organizing the army at Washington. On General McClellan's appointment to the chief command, he placed General Buell in command of a division, which soon became so perfect in discipline and drill as to elicit general remark. Soon afterward, it was deemed best to supersede General Sherman in the command of the army in Kentucky, and General Buell was appointed in his stead. He spent the winter in organizing his troops, and in February proceeded to move. The Battle of Mill Spring and the occupation of Bowling Green were the first exploits of his troops. He occupied Nashville after the fall of Donelson and then moved southward through Tennessee. 3 of his divisions arrived at Pittsburg Landing in time to save General Grant's army. Thank you, Hannah. Buell. Yeah, I wasn't really familiar with him. Major General John A. McClernand. Major General John A. McClernand is not a soldier by trade, but is best known to the country as a Democratic politician from Illinois. He was a leader of the Douglas Democrats and did battle for them valiantly at Charleston. At the outbreak of the war, he took sides manfully for the Union and shortly afterward was nominated a brigadier general of volunteers. In the Belmont fight, he manifested that he possessed very good military capacity, and during his administration of military affairs at Cairo, he secured the goodwill of the men under his command. In the reconnaissance in the rear of Columbus, during the advance upon Fort Henry, and at the grand battle before Fort Donelson, General McClernand manifested superior military ability. For his gallantry on these occasions, he was, on the 21st of March, made by Congress a Major General of Volunteers and accompanied the advance up the Tennessee River toward Savannah. At the battle at Pittsburg Landing, he distinguished himself exceedingly. Nope, not McClellan. McClernand. McClellan at this time was leading the Peninsular Campaign towards Richmond, and that didn't go so well. Brigadier General W.H.L. Wallace. This gallant soldier, who fell at the Battle of Pittsburg Landing, was a lawyer by trade and a resident of Ottawa, Illinois. His first service in the Mexican War, in which he enlisted as a private in 1846, carrying a musket in Company I, 1st Regiment Illinois Volunteers, led by the lamented Hardin. A lieutenancy and adjutancy followed, and General Wallace was by his colonel's side when he fell. At the outbreak of the present war, he was elected colonel of the 11th Illinois. For months, he was acting brigadier and commandant at Bird's Point, and he received his appointment and confirmation to brigade command for gallantry at Donelson. At Pittsburg, he commanded a division. He was shot on the Sunday, the ball entering below his ear and passing through his head. He was left where he fell till Monday, when he was found still living, but died shortly afterward. He has 3 brothers and a father-in-law in service in this war. The latter, Colonel T. Lyle Dickey, and of the 4th Illinois Cavalry, his law partner, and now attached to General Wallace's division. That had to have been horrible. He was shot by a musket ball, and it entered below his ear, and then penetrated and passed through his head. And he was still alive the next day. Brigadier General B.M. Prentice. General Prentice, who was taken prisoner at Pittsburg Landing, is an old soldier of the Mexican War. When that war broke out, he was volunteered as a lieutenant of the Illinois troops and was selected by the unfortunate J.J. Hardin to act as his adjutant. By Hardin's side, he fought in every battle until that gallant chieftain fell, and with his own hands he helped to dress his corpse for the last rites of humanity. During that entire campaign, he was the most intimate companion of that lamented officer, and the sash which he wears now at the head of his regiment is the one which Hardin wore on that last fatal field. He is an able officer and very popular with his men. He was a candidate for Congress in the 5th Illinois District last year, but the Democratic majority was too much for him. At the commencement of the rebellion, he stepped forth at the head of the 1st Regiment of Illinois Volunteers, who volunteered for 3 months. The regiment was numerically known as the 10th Illinois Volunteers, and as the colonel was the senior officer of all the troops who occupied the depot at Cairo, he became acting brigadier general and commander of the post. He afterward had the full rank awarded to him dating from May 17, 1861. His regiment re-enlisted for the war en masse until under Colonel Morgan. He has been engaged during the war in various parts of the state of Missouri, more recently on the Kansas border, from which post he proceeded to join the Army up the Tennessee River. Just a few more. I do think it's interesting because I don't know all of these people, and it seems like they are all veterans of the Mexican-American War, which we don't really talk about very much. Brigadier General W.T. Sherman. General Sherman is a native of Ohio, brother of Senator John Sherman. He graduated at West Point in 1840, standing number 6 in his class, in which were Generals Van Vliet, George H. Thomas, and others of the Union Army, and General McCown of the rebels, recently a commander at Island Number 10. I still think it's hilarious that it's just called Island Number 10. On the 1st of July, 1840, he was promoted to a 2nd lieutenancy of the 3rd Artillery, and on the 30th of November, 1841, was further promoted to a 1st lieutenancy. He was acting as Assistant Adjutant General in the 10th Military Department in 1847, and was breveted Captain for meritorious services in California during the war with Mexico. His brevet was awarded in March 1851 and dated from May 30, 1848. He was next appointed Commissary of Subsistence with rank of Captain dating from September 1850. He resigned the service on the 6th of September, 1853. On the 17th of May, 1861, he was appointed a Brigadier General of Volunteers, and when General Anderson requested to be relieved, was appointed to the command of the army in Kentucky. He was subsequently superseded by General Buell and removed to the command of the force at Sedalia. After a short time, he was again removed and placed on the non-active list. General Halleck has since recalled him into active life and ordered him to join General Grant. Brigadier General Nelson. General Nelson is a native of Kentucky and about 40 years of age. He entered the United States Navy at manhood and served 12 years at sea. When the rebellion broke out, he offered his services to government and was detailed to command the Ohio River fleet of gunboats. His extensive acquaintance with the people of Kentucky and his large relationship in that state pointed to him as a proper person, during the bad health of General Anderson, to be sent into Kentucky to sound the loyal sentiment of that state and to strengthen it. Accordingly, as early as April, he went thither and began the formation of a camp and the recruiting of troops at a point between Garrardsville and Dansville. Nope, Garrardsville and Darraville, since known as Camp Dick Robinson. Sometime afterward, Colonel George H. Thomas of the 2nd Cavalry proceeded thither, having received the appointment of Brigadier General of Volunteers and assumed the command. General Nelson was then ordered to form a camp at Washington, Mason County, Kentucky, for the enlistment of troops. To fine natural abilities and large experience in arms, he adds great energy of character and fine judgment of men. He it was who ordered the arrest of Stanton, Casto, and Company, though they were old friends and companions. He does not recognize any relationships in life when duty demands their prostration or sacrifice. His brother Thomas Nelson of Indiana is our present minister to Chile, and his brother-in-law J. Monroe Stockton, postmaster at Maysville. Brigadier General Thomas L. Crittenden. This one's short. General Crittenden is a native of Kentucky and a son of John J. Crittenden. His brother George is a rebel and commanded the rebel force at Mill Spring. When the rebels took up arms in Kentucky, General T. L. Crittenden was empowered to take command, and at the head of the Home Guard, started for Muldrows Hill, and effectively checked the advance of the rebels on Louisville. Since that time, he has been actively engaged in the field under General Buell. His commission of Brigadier General dates from September 27, 1861. Acting Brigadier General T.W. Sweeney. Colonel Sweeney, who was wounded at the Battle of Pittsburg Landing and distinguished himself, is an Irishman by birth, but came to this country when a child. He was bred a printer, but volunteered when the Mexican War broke out, and was chosen 2nd Lieutenant in Burnett's regiment. He was at the storming of Veracruz, and was with the army up to the city of Mexico. He was twice wounded in the Battle of Churubusco, once so severely that he had to lose his right arm. On Colonel Sweeney's return to this city in March 1848, he received the commission of 2nd Lieutenant in the 2nd Regiment of the United States Infantry, and was soon afterward ordered to California, where he performed many arduous duties. From California, he, with a portion of his regiment, was ordered to Fort Pierre in northern Nebraska, where he served as aide to General Harney. In June 1851, he was promoted to a 1st lieutenancy. At the commencement of the rebellion, Colonel Sweeney, who was then a captain of the 2nd United States Infantry, having obtained that rank on the 19th of January 1861, was ordered to Newport Barracks, and soon afterward to the command of the St. Louis Arsenal, previous to General Leon taking the command. He was also second in command at the surrender of the notorious rebel Clabe. Claib Jackson. I don't know this. Claib period Jackson. And was afterward appointed colonel and acting brigadier general of the 3 months Missouri Volunteers. Previous to the Battle of Wilson's Creek, where it was decided not to attack the rebel General Price, General Sweeney was so impressed that a retreat would be worse than a defeat that he prevailed on General Lyon to make the attack. In that battle, he was again wounded, and still carries the ball in his limb. He's a magnet for wounds, apparently. Brigadier General McDowell McCook. General McCook, who distinguished himself at Pittsburg, comes of the fighting family of McCooks of Columbiana County, Ohio. He was born April 22nd, 1831, was appointed to West Point in 1848, and graduated in 1852. He was appointed brevet second lieutenant in the 3rd Infantry and ordered to the Department of New Mexico. He took an active part in all the prominent Indian campaigns in that department up to February 1858, when he was ordered to West Point, where he served as principal assistant instructor in infantry tactics, and also in the art of war until the fall of Sumter. He then applied for permission to take the field and was ordered to his native state to muster in volunteers for the 3 months' service. On his 30th birthday, he was elected and commissioned colonel of the 1st Ohio Volunteers. He commanded this regiment at the Battle of Bull Run, where it formed part of Schenk's brigade. He returned to Ohio with the regiment, mustered it out of the service, and recruited it again at Dayton, Ohio. He was appointed Brigadier General of Volunteers September 3rd, 1861, and ordered to the Department of the Cumberland. He has since commanded a division under Buell, and arrived at Pittsburg in time to be of great service. Brigadier General Lovell H. Rousseau. It's the last one. General Rousseau, who is reported for gallantry at Pittsburg, is a Kentuckian, a Huguenot of Huguenot descent. His father died when he was young, leaving him to educate himself. In 1840, he removed near Louisville and began the study of law without an instructor. Subsequently, he settled in Indiana, where he was elected successively to the state legislature and Senate. He commanded a company in the Mexican War and fought gallantly at the Battle of Buena Vista. In 1849, he returned to Louisville and rose rapidly to distinction at a bar rich in ability. He was a member of the Kentucky State Senate at the time, and at the time our present national troubles began, and immediately took a bold and decided stand in favor of the government. In June 1861, he resigned his seat in the Senate and applied for a commission to raise volunteers against the remonstrances and determined opposition of nearly all the prominent men of Kentucky. He succeeded in raising 2 splendid regiments composed entirely of Kentuckians, called the Louisville Legion. It was those troops, aided by a battalion of Home Guards from Louisville, that saved that city from falling into the hands of the rebels. General Rousseau was soon promoted to be Brigadier General of Volunteers and has since served under Buell. Just popping on for the mutton chop content. Thankfully, I had a request to look at stuff about the Battle of Shiloh, and found the coverage of it, and the illustration on screen was the heroes of the Battle of Pittsburg Landing, aka Shiloh, and included in this paper, they had biographical sketches on all of them. So we read those. And unsurprisingly, there's so much stuff and there's not enough time. Because it's 5 o'clock, and that is when I have to start packing up to go home, because I have more things to do today that are not this. And so, that will be where we leave off with the 1862 Harper's Weekly. If you want to explore more of 1862 Harper's Weekly on your own, the Finding Aid note has a link that will take you to where they can be found online. At that place. And let's see, what is next week? Next week is something. I'm waiting for the application to open that will show me what it is. Oh, okay. Next week is when we rescheduled Erotica of the Past. Because I was out for medical reasons the date it was originally scheduled. And so it had to be rescheduled. So that's happening next Wednesday. Yep. And there's some medieval erotica. Yeah, you heard me. Medieval. It's a fascinating topic. It'll be interesting to do because I will try to cover as many parts as possible. Like, so there may be moments where I'm looking at the thing, covering something up, and then showing it to you. Because, yeah. It's possible, Hannah. I'm not sure. Also, maybe possibly medical terms, or I have no idea. But that's coming up next week, and then the week after is science fiction, and then the week after that should be the end of the Engineers Journal, and then we get ice cream with Kira. So that's all coming up in the future. Oh, but that's not. There's actually a gap in there. The beginning of May, there are not going to be streams. And I know why for one of them, but not for the other. I don't know. But we don't have a stream in May until May 14th. So one of them is because there's a Metallica concert here and we'll be closed. But the other, I don't remember why. But I'm not going to argue with my schedule because it exists for a reason. Anyway, let me see where we're going to raid today. Oh dear. Who is currently on? What? Oh? Uh, okay. Twitch is having an issue. Uh, cool. In that case, I'm gonna go and we're gonna pop in on Stephen Joyce because I knew to look for him and he is indeed on. So that's where we shall go if it lets me. I do encourage you to pop on over with me. Stephen has a wonderful community. Handcrafted tiny hats are available upon request. He will don them and it will be good times. He's currently playing a game called Mythwrecked Ambrosia Island, and has been very supportive of me and this stream generally. So good people, good community. I encourage you to hop on over there and say hi. But yeah, we're gonna be raiding on over there. So yeah. Uh-huh. And there we go. Yeah, thank you. Keep exploring history, everybody.